Hello everyone and welcome back to another Bannerlord video. Today I will be sharing my top 10 features for Bannerlord. These range from small improvements to completely new features. I chose these features because I think they will most dramatically improve the immersion within the game and also the overall satisfaction which the game gives the players. At number 10, I have the Sergeant mode for single player. Players fighting in battles or sieges with their faction while under the command of another lord will be assigned to a unit, either cavalry, infantry, or archers, similar to how it works in Captain Battle in the beta. I really enjoyed Captain Battle, and I think that it's an excellent feature which will allow battles to become more strategic and less of an unmanageable clump of dumb AI as it sometimes turned out in Warband. Additionally, there seems to be some kind of chain of command within the army, having certain lords have more power than others. The player can also take advantage of this sergeant feature if they have AI lords following them. At number 9, I have executions. Executions are fairly straightforward, however, they can only be done on rare occasions when the execution is actually warranted. Perhaps a lord has been repeatedly raiding your villages or your family's villages, and then it's a good idea to proceed with an execution. But you can't just execute all the lords that you capture in battle because you will get relation penalties and possibly other penalties. Lastly, you should also keep in mind that your own character could be executed by the AI, so if you piss off the wrong minor faction, perhaps they will come after you, which would be a nice feature. At number 8, I have minor factions. Minor factions appear to be either families or organizations which hold a large amount of land or power within a faction. I've always felt like this should be a feature in Warband, because the family and family relations were an essential part of any medieval world. Many lords would have kin who also had holdings of their own, and the relations between lords creates a more immersive medieval world. Presumably, minor factions are even more closely connected with each other and work with the family interests in mind, and perhaps they can even form alliances with other minor factions through marriages. It will really be awesome to see how these minor factions maneuver politically. At number 7, I have weapon physics and improved combat. From what I've seen in the beta, the weapons are a little bit slower and have a more heavy feeling than the ones in Warband. The animations are also far better, and the sounds add life to the game. Really, the sounds are very realistic. When you hit something with a sword, it really sounds like how it would sound. It's something with an axe, it actually sounds like how it would sound, depending on the material that you're hitting. It's really very well done with the sounds. Like in Warband, damage is dealt with blunt, piercing, and slashing damage. However, unlike in Warband, the place on which the weapon falls and the part of the weapon which makes contact changes the amount of damage which is put into the player. While slashing damage does the most damage, it is also the worst against armor. Blunt weapons are great for dealing with armor, but do less damage in general, or take longer to swing. Piercing damage sits somewhere in between the two. Sieges come in at number 6. The sieges in Bannerlord look great. Once you have a sufficient party numbers and sufficient supplies, you can settle down and set up a siege camp against the settlement and you are besieging. By doing this, you start the bombardment phase, during which you construct siege engines like battering rams, siege towers, ballistas, ladders, and catapults. Presumably, you will also deal casualties to the defenders and or take casualties from the defenders during this stage. Once your equipment is ready, you can launch an assault. You get to position where you want your troops to be, and where you want your different siege engines to be at the beginning of the battle. The defenders will continue your strategy that you have put in place, and they will move the siege equipment forward and or launch the catapults. So the defenders can also construct artillery and even can call up their militia to help them at the beginning of the siege. If the defenders have a governor in the castle, their defense plans will be more intelligent. In some cases, the defenders can choose to retreat to their keep, where they can hold out longer from the attackers. During a keep assault, small waves of men will fight each other in the inside of the keep. Personally, I hope these keep battles will have the attackers start from outside, so that the defenders can shoot down upon them from the top of the keep, or windows in the middle of the keep. But I have a feeling that the keep battles will be similar to the town battles in Warband, which would be a little bit disappointing. Number 5 is custom settlements. Like many other games, Bannerlord has decided to divide their settlement upgrades into military and civic categories. Some civic upgrades mentioned in the dev blogs include granaries, vegetable gardens, and carpenter halls. Another interesting feature is the governor feature, which allows you to appoint a family member to oversee your feasts. This seems similar to a feature which I've always wanted and was in the mod In the Name of Jerusalem, the vassal feature. However, it doesn't seem the same, and it doesn't seem quite the same, and I hope they also add the ability for players and AI lords to have their own vassals, because that would add even more depth to the game. But returning to the main point, the project appears to have different tiers of upgrades, which will allow players even more room for upgrade, a feature which was dramatically lacking in Warband. At number 4, I have bargaining. This will be a truly great feature in Bannerlord, because it will allow almost any bargain between a player and an NPC. It takes into account players' charm or wit, and they can bargain with any item, money, or fief in the game to get something from the NPC. Presumably, they can also bargain with a notable to get troops from them. I can see this feature being used in many different ways, and it would be great to be used for the end of the war to settle the terms of the peace. It will also allow the players to build up a larger fief by trading fiefs with other lords strategically, so their fiefs are closer together and easier to manage. The sheer flexibility this mechanic adds to the game is what makes it my number 4 feature. At number 3, I have the character creation screen and just the character faces in general. When I first started reading the dev blogs, I was absolutely amazed at the level of detail you can get into in the character screens. The faces look a lot more realistic than in Warband, and actually have even more flexibility in terms of how your character looks than in Warband. Not only that, but the faces also can pull emotions, which is a huge bonus for immersion.
The armor on the cataphract
which
is
will
really
be
good
very good to see in scenes.
Statistics wise, it's very.
At number 2, I have logistics. Feeding a massive army is a difficult task in Bannerlord, and you also have to worry about transporting all of the soldiers' equipment and other necessary items via mules or horses or your men carrying them. If you have cavalry, you actually have to have extra horses for your men too. So I assume that the cost of horses is going to go down in this game. Various other items will also be necessary for your men in different cases, such as tools for besieging a castle. I wouldn't be surprised if they made alcohol give your men a morale boost, because that would something that I was always a little bit confused why they didn't have alcohol as a food or a morale booster in Warband. But if you cannot feed your men, they will start to die and fight amongst each other, becoming less useful in battle. Sometimes they are wounded, or sometimes they have less health and less morale. Parties in the same army have the option to share their food with all their lords, so this will mitigate the chances of a party going starving in the middle of a siege. However, commanders can also assemble foraging parties, which can ride around the country confiscating resources and bringing them back to the main party. If the enemy is raiding your villages, you have the option to burn your fields in order to prevent the enemy from obtaining food from your fiefs. However, this will also have negative effects on your own economics. And coming in at number 1, my favorite is the familial system. My favorite feature in Bannerlord by far is the ability to start your own family. I love this feature because it allows you to develop a dynasty similar to CK2. This system is a great system because it simulates the medieval feudal structure, which lords would have heirs who would inherit their wealth. It also allows the player to die but continue playing as the heir, which is a great feature, and which will allow you to become more immersed in the game and keep the game interesting, because it'll when your character dies, it'll be like in CK2 and you have a whole new character where you get to start a whole new sort of journey. It seems the AI would also have this feature where they would develop their own families and parts of their family would die and they would have their own heirs, which would be awesome. I can just imagine marrying into a minor Vlandian noble family, and on the 3rd generation perhaps you start your own branch of the family because you have enough land and you've become you've become very powerful in your main faction. Maybe you could start your own minor faction, or maybe you could take over as the leader of your minor faction if you married into that faction. I also like the idea of being able to give your family members jobs. It would be awesome to have your cousin on your 3rd generation who you could give a job as a constable of a castle, or something like that. Or maybe even have some of your family members as companions. In conclusion, this is my favorite feature because it helps simulate a real medieval world and allows you to build up a family dynasty similar to CK2. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and please share the video with your friends.